do that now. They'll just miss all of my deathless words. Okay, Jody, let me introduce you and thank you so much for coming on the call. Everybody, this is Jody Rein, who is the senior manager with Indivisible. And Jody co-founded the Indivisible Truth Brigade in 2020. Jody has been on staff with Indivisible for 5 years, starting as a statewide organizer for Colorado. Her personal passion prompted her to change careers into a professional political activism. Prior to that, she spent decades as an executive, agent, and author in the book publishing industry. So this is obviously somebody who knows a lot about information. So Jody, please take it away. And I've made you co-host if you would like to share anything with us.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Yeah, and I do have some slides that I'll share in a sec. So hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here this morning with you. And I got to say, so heartened by what Dee was just talking about. The work that you do is critical, and your state is so important to not only what's happening in your state, but also the whole nation. And with the kind of races that are coming up right now, as you all know, where the turnout tends to be small, as Dee was saying, the work that you do really makes a difference that you can see in real time. So I just got to say, in a time right now in the world where things are very dark, it was very heartening to hear what you're doing right now to make differences that last. So thank y'all. And now I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let's hope I do this. See, gives me two options for the same thing. Let's give it a try and see if this is the right one.
Looks good.
Can everybody see? Oh, excellent. Yep. All right, so I saw on the agenda I have about a half an hour, and I made some new slides last night, so I'm not quite sure how long this is going to take. I think it's probably about 20 minutes with time for questions.
Perfect.
And we'll see. And I also have a little extra thing that if we run short, that we can do together. So I'm here to talk to you about the Indivisible Truth Brigade, which is all about disrupting disinformation. As you can see in this little subtitle, it's person by person and mind by opened mind, which might be a little different than what you might think of initially when you think about fighting disinformation, because a lot of people think that fighting disinformation means arguing with facts, against just making someone understand the right way to look at things. Well, that's not really how we fight disinformation. We fight disinformation using a lot of the tools that you're using right now. I'm going to talk about three things. One, what disinformation is, how it spreads, and then what's the Indivisible Truth Brigade all about. We'll have a little pop quiz, and then we'll talk about how to get involved. I love this quote from Timothy Snyder. I don't know if you're not familiar with Timothy Snyder, you should be. He wrote the amazing little book called he's written a lot of things, but his tiny book called On Tyranny is just something everybody should have. And essentially, if we don't have access to facts, we can't trust each other. Without trust, there's no law. Without law, there's no democracy. So here's a direct line from truth to democracy. I just love this quote. I was curious, maybe to get us started, if you could just pop in the chat what you're seeing out there. I'm very curious as to what kinds of disinformation, especially with the elections coming up, and just all the things that are going on in Virginia. Are you seeing any specific disinformation topics that seem to be rising to the surface and kind of seeping their way into conversation, even among people that you might be surprised about? I mean, for a lot of people, it has to do with woke culture and the LGBTQ community. That's, a lot of just, lies and disinformation and false statements are spreading about that. What else are you seeing? I'm just stopping for a moment to take a look at the chat. Climate is an area. a lot of dog whistles. Immigration is a big area with a lot of lies. Crime, yeah, crime is very big, especially around elections. You know, this.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi.
hello. That was funny. I don't know what that was. Oh, from Ohio, Right to Life, the recession. Yep. Yeah, Nina, what you're saying about that it's making you suspicious of everybody, that's exactly the point of disinformation, as we'll be talking about. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's all interesting and predictable. Oh, yeah, and that people don't believe in journalism anymore. It's so funny. I was talking with someone in a completely different part of the country the other day, and that on a call like this, and that was also exactly her main concern. So, here's some definitions about disinformation. Disinformation isn't just the kind of lies that are blatant. It also is misinformation. Misinformation are the same kind of lies that you're seeing in false statements, but it's not deliberately shared. The purpose is not to cause harm. It may be false, but again, the people who are sharing it are doing it inadvertently or accidentally. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in a few minutes. And then disinformation is information that's false, but it's deliberately shared for personal or political gain. And malinformation is a really interesting category. So malinformation, it's often used by politicians. It's can also be called cloaked science. That's where people take one tiny little element of truth, real data, but then they put it in a completely different context and it's distorted so it can do harm. A good example of that is COVID vaccinations, right? Where from time, vaccinations, there's a minute chance that any vaccination you get could cause a bad reaction. But anytime that happened during the COVID vaccination horrendous onslaught of disinformation, that was taken completely out of context and shared as if it were a fact and scared an awful lot of people. Hundreds of thousands of people died unnecessarily because they didn't get vaccinations because they were so confused by all the lies that were being spread that had a tiny little element of, one piece of data, but didn't really put things in context. And this happens again and again. As I say, it's a lot of political posturing. So the question is for us to think about a little bit is, what's so bad about disinformation? How does disinformation give these folks power? So what's the connection between disinformation and its goals? I'm curious to see if you might want to give that a try, see if you want to give that an answer in the chat. And again, I'll just be quiet for a moment. Right? Confusion. And when people are confused about elections, for example, what do? They don't vote a lot of times, right? Which means that they are not participating in our institutions, and that when people are not out there participating, then that leaves a wide path for bad actors to just plug on through with a much fewer number of people who support them. They manipulate people, right? Doubts about your own worldview, lose trust. Exactly. And making folks angry. You guys have all predicted exactly what I'm going to be saying next. Yeah. So it increases mistrust in democratic institutions across the board. It also makes people long for authority, which is, I think, another really interesting component of all this, that the people who are confused, angry, full of mistrust because of the lies, then ironically turn to the liars to be leaders, because the liars often evince this position of authority, and it's human nature, and there have been a lot of studies about this, and it's happening in America now too, is that people, when they start mistrusting democracy, then they start looking for this power figure to lead them. So yeah, it is a dangerous thing. One thing that I think is important for all of us to always keep in mind is that disinformation is not an equal opportunity evil. So disinformation is most frequently targeted both to and about vulnerable groups, meaning disinformation is a bully. It punches down. And the reason that it does that is it wants, as a lot of you said in the chat, it wants to make you angry. It wants to make you feel powerless, but it also wants to make you tribal and divided. We are all human. We all have very similar reactions. All of us are susceptible to this kind of thing. And we tend to close in to the people we know best and push out the people we don't know. And disinformation, the bad actors who spread lies, they're often lying about people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ community, Jews, Muslims, any group that's small, doesn't have as much power, and maybe not as well known. And because one way you fight all of these things is you get to know other people, and voila, you find that people are people. But, there's a lot of people out there who don't have direct contact with people in smaller groups, and dehumanizing people is a first step to fascism. And so this is very, very serious and very, very important. So here's a question, and I think some of you have already answered it in the chat, but let's just take a quick look at why people believe these lies. And we'll just ask that again for anybody who wants to participate. Why do you think people believe they want to believe them? Yeah. And the lies support their basic worldview. Yep. Underlying bias and prejudice. Yep. You guys are so smart. That's exactly right. So just to put a little bit of a, like a formal term on this, yes, info silos, that is so important. And I'll just take a moment to address that, because I don't think I have this so much elsewhere. The siloing of information is growing exponentially because of what's happening with social media, because of what's happened with Twitter, and because, with Musk taking over Twitter, and that Twitter becoming less, more racist, more full of lies, more ultra right wing, then people are leaving it, and they're looking to get information even online in places they trust. And the more siloed we are, the more we just continually hear the same things again and again. I know, who would have predicted the internet would become a liability? Yeah. Anyway, so this is called confirmation bias, which is when people subconsciously value their political identities or maybe religious identities or just some kind of very strong identity more than the truth. And we don't intentionally do this, but we do dismiss information that isn't ideologically resonant. Again, I want to say, and this is sort of a theme for everything I'm talking about, that this is not limited to the people that we or you might consider on the other side. This is true for all of us. I feel this every day when I'm hearing, especially with certain events that are going on in the world. I have a certain belief about the world. And when I hear things that don't fit with the way I want to believe the world is, I can physically feel my brain saying, okay, let's just put that to the side. This is for all of us. So that's confirmation bias. And then there's just a simple lack of reflection. People don't stop and think. They just, yes, sometimes their reasoning abilities are hijacked by emotional triggers, which will be a theme here. But also, we act fast, right? We push buttons quickly online, and our own buttons are pushed quickly offline. And we don't stop, we just argue. And then another reasons we believe it is that this is called heuristics. It means that our brains tend to perceive as true information that's easier to process and remember. I find that fascinating. So we don't just tend to remember these kinds of things, but the things that are memorable, our brains kind of shift into thinking it's true. And that's why the slogans work. It works with an image, repetition works. So then the question is, how might we all recognize disinformation, given what we just talked about? So here are a few keys, just for all of us, when we're seeing or hearing things out there, but some keys to ways to stop, take a second look that something might be something that's not true. It makes you afraid for your family or your future. That's particularly common right now with all of these arguments against what is called woke culture. It's that's the tactic. Tell somebody that at school their kids are going to be taught things that make them feel guilty. You tell anybody that, and any family is going to be like, I don't want that. I don't want that. It makes you afraid, and it particularly makes you feel threatened for your family or your livelihood. Economic disinformation makes people afraid for their livelihood. All of the lies about government, marvelous government-funded programs, when the right takes those and says, well, if we fund these programs, then you'll have to pay more taxes, and it's going to make your future uncertain. Those lies work. If a lie makes you feel very angry, or if anything makes you, obviously I feel really angry when I see the disinformation, but having something giving you an emotional reaction is a good cue to stop and think twice. It doesn't mean that it's always something that's a lie, but it does mean it's a cue. And then when things are presented as black and white without nuance, it's a dead giveaway, because the world is not a simple place. The world is full of nuance. So this, something to keep in mind. The bad actors, the people who generate the disinformation, they don't care about the issues. As I've said, the goal is to gain profit and power, and they take the same playbook and they do it again and again, regardless of what the issue is. Isn't that something? Yeah, so it's not like most people who are spreading lies about something care about the thing. They care about gaining power. And this is how it happens. There's a cycle out there. Typically, now this doesn't always happen, but this is pretty typical, in that lies and propaganda are created and pushed on social media platforms or at local events, like school board meetings and things like that. They kind of test out a lie to see what's going to stick, right? And this is on those silent places. It gets tested out in the very, Truth Social and all these other nasty right-wing swampy places. And then the stickiest claims are picked up and amplified further by the big bad actors and networks, like used to be, well, Fox News still does it, but now there's I'm blanking out on the name of the other horrible sort of national right-wing platforms. But then what happens is that the mainstream media respond by sometimes disputing the disinformation, but they do it in a way that names it. And so it starts becoming into our consciousness. And so even in the mainstream, even if they're saying, well, this particular thing is not true, by repeating it, then that cements it. And then the bad actors tweak it and find new inputs to start the cycle again. And that's what happens as it goes. Yes, OAN, that's what I was trying to think of. Thank you. And Newsmax. But this is all a trick, right? All of this repetition is often coming from the same source. And we're not kind of moving into some places that can help us feel positive about all this ugly garbage out there. It's repeated the same thing on all these places, but the truth is just a few right-wing super spreaders fuel most disinformation. So this is not this giant thing with a whole bunch of different people intentionally creating lies in order to gain profit and power. No, it's just a few places. Yeah, they have a lot of money, but there's not a lot of folks. There's not organizations. There's a study or several studies done around, the time of COVID, and they found just 12 people were behind most of the vaccine hoaxes on social media. And as you can see, this quote I love, it's almost like conspiracy theory Mad Libs. They just inserted the new claims. So I find this both horrifying, but also very reassuring. It's a very, there's an awful lot of people out there and not a lot of people who have these really bad intentions. I wanted to take a moment before I jumped into the Truth Brigade and what we can do about disinformation, just to talk about what's happening right now. I'd mentioned what's happening in the world, but I want to mention what's happening specifically in Israel and Gaza. And I think if we take a moment together, that we can easily connect the dots there to all the things that we've been talking about thus far, to the massive amount of misinformation and disinformation about the Israel-Hamas war, and about how, because this is a topic that is so personal to so many people, why it's so ripe for not only lies to spread, but the intent of the lies to spread, and the intent being divide us, anger us, make us feel impotent, make us feel confused, make us want to jump into arguments. This is a perfect situation. It's a perfect storm for bad actors to capitalize on just human nature and where people are. And so what I would encourage all of you to do, and to tell all of your friends to do, because this is, you know, what's happening with people dying and people being kidnapped and homes being destroyed and everyone feeling scared for their lives and scared of the future, is so, you know, awful and so heartbreaking for all of us. And it's also heartbreaking when we realize that it can be tearing at our own relationships when people have different feelings about it and use different words. So my recommendation to all of you, and we've sent out a resource on this, is in this particular area right now, most of all, do stop and think. Do encourage everyone to be skeptical of what they're seeing online. Do take time to verify what you're seeing with reputable sources, and do think critically before engaging. You know, do use the tactics that I'll be sharing in a moment about what to do in these situations. And just, you know, when you're hearing everything, if you could possibly think of it through the lens of how to handle disinformation, I think it might be helpful. So moving on, and does anybody have any comments or anything that you want, if you want to put something in the chat about this? I know this is a really difficult topic, but I'm looking at the chat too. I'll move on, but I'll watch the chat. So here's the good news. And there's a lot of good news about all of this. So I'm not talking about Israel and Hamas. I'm talking about disinformation. So I had described disinformation and misinformation. We had defined that 85% of disinformation is actually misinformation. Most of the lies that we see out there are shared accidentally or inadvertently. So I'm going to think for a moment about what that means to you. You know, essentially means that there's an awful lot of people out there who might be sharing misinformation, but don't want to. The world isn't as ugly as we might think. You know, a lot of the lies that we're seeing, and a lot of the people who seem to be diametrically opposed because they've been brainwashed, they're sharing misinformation accidentally. Another bit of really good news is that we've seen that the, you know, bad actors repeat and, you know, have a whole cycle, have a whole strategy for sharing disinformation. But when we become trusted messengers, you and me, we are trusted much more than emotional hyperbole, and much more than bots, and much more than, sadly, you know, than trustworthy journalism to some degree, but certainly more than untrustworthy journalism. And then another really exciting recent discovery, and this is now verified with many studies, is that one message can block disinformation. So if we suggest in the right way, in an empathetic, open-minded way, if we suggest that people check a source before sharing a piece of disinformation, it stops 15% of disinformation from being spread. That's a lot. That's a lot. And then the final bit of good news is that I think we all know that when you're feeling emotional, you can't think straight. That's how we're built as humans. But when we're faced with empathetic and open minds, we do think straight. Then we can start thinking critically. Yeah, it is all good news. So we at Indivisible did our own study of the tactics that the Truth Brigade used and shared one message to voters who were likely to share disinformation. And we verified these outside studies that we had seen, that the intent to share disinformation dropped by 14% just when faced with one message. So, hey. So how we combat toxic disinformation is us, meaning you, meaning me. It's by grassroots power, which is what Indivisible is all about. So moving into the Truth Brigade itself, this Indivisible program, we've launched more than 70 message campaigns in the last few years. 6,400 people have signed up. Whoops, this Twitter impressions, it's more than 550 million. Sorry about that, that was a typo. So more than 500 million impressions have been made on social media, which we could track. We can't track Facebook in the same way, but we know that our members are sharing counter disinformation messages on Facebook as much as they are, now more than on Twitter. So this is, if you talk about that 15% number of people who are convinced not to share disinformation with one message, 500 million impressions is pretty darn exciting. The system that we recommend and that we use is that we have a team of outside experts. They're consultants that we pay, and they study disinformation every day. They're in those ugly swamps, and they identify the most damaging at the time. And then our team writes a brief disinformation busting message. We structure it as a truth sandwich, so it's 3 simple parts. And then we share the basic message with you, and we teach tactics. But then we recommend that you personalize this message that we pre-write for you, and then you share it authentically online and offline within your networks. And then we repeat it. So basically, we send you a 3-sentence message and you personalize it and send it out there, and then we repeat it pretty much every month. And our tactics are pretty simple based on everything I've said before. First of all, we're trusted messengers. We talk with our own networks on and offline. We're not trying to persuade people who are unpersuadable. Life's too short for that, and your volunteer work is too intense for that. We don't want to burn you out. We don't want you to feel discouraged. We don't engage and we don't repeat. And that means that if you are online, never click on the lies. Don't click on the bad actors, because with every click, you increase the likelihood that the lie will be seen. So just ignore it. Don't click on it. Send a counter message instead through a separate means. Offline, we don't argue. Instead, we are, well, I'll tell you about that in a second, but we're not arguing with people. Arguments never convince anyone, right? We have to convince ourselves. And then as possible, I put never, but basically we try not to use the language of the lies. A lot of times what the bad actors are really good at are naming catchy phrases that stick in our minds and predispose us to believe disinformation. We try not to use the same language. And then, as I said, we share effective counter messages that make people check their sources, think independently, and we attract people through first finding common values and empathy, because with any topic, we can find at least some underlying something that we share. If someone believes, for example, that vaccinations might be dangerous, well, the common value around that is that all of us want to be healthy, right? And we can open a conversation even with someone who seems to feel very differently by saying something like, yeah, I don't want to be healthy too. Yeah, I want to trust my doctors too. Yeah, this situation with, viruses out there is really scary. I feel that too. That's a simple way that you can open a conversation and diffuse that emotional trigger that we talked about before. So as I mentioned, we do 3 counter messages in the form of a truth sandwich. I see we're just about at the end of this of my half hour, so I'll not take a lot of time on specific examples, but you can see they're very simple. They have 3 parts. Our October messages are about government funding and unmasking the source of local disinformation. And I'll share these slides with you so you can take some time with them when you have more time. But these are sample truth sandwiches for you to just take a look. But you can see they're simple, they're clear, and they follow a very distinct pattern. And we always provide explainers for all of these truth sandwiches that we provide that give you a lot of trustworthy resources so that you can personalize the messages. And if you don't have time, we also have a place you can click once, and if you're online, it'll give you a message that you can personalize and share directly onto an online platform. And it also lets you download the message if you want to turn it into something like a letter to the editor. And right now, just really quickly, we're launching a neighbor to neighbor project. I don't think any of you will be involved with this because you're all so busy with the Virginia elections right now. So I would not encourage you to do this now, but we'll be doing this next year also. And that's where we're actually encouraging personal conversations with people that you know to help pre-bunk the lies, which means you spread the truth ahead of the lies. And I think I'll stop rather than doing the pop quiz now because I don't want to take the time from the next person. And I'm going to zip through this just to let you know how you can get involved.
Well, Jody, I don't see Sakina on the call yet. So maybe we could take just an additional minute if that makes sense to you.
Thanks a lot. I'll skip the pop quiz because I think everybody got everything. But I do want to take a moment just to share how you can get involved, and also to let you know that obviously you've probably been on a million of these calls. You know that there are links for everything, and I'll be sharing the links with Dee so she can share them with your group. If this sounds like something that you can be interested in, I was going to say passionate about, but yeah, I think most of the people who get involved do feel pretty strongly that they would like to take a personal role in rebuilding trust in America and, tearing down some of the unnecessary walls between us when we really do have so much in common. But you can get involved at any level. You can sign up for an email and then just kind of watch what we do. We send out emails every week, and we have meetings twice a month. One is a big truth meeting, a webinar. Usually, a few hundred people come and they learn really interesting things about disinformation. And then once a month, we have new member orientations. But you can just, sign up for the email and see if it's for you. So that's a real easy kind of low-hanging fruit way to get involved. If your group is interested in this, but isn't sure exactly how much you would, what you have time for, because I know capacity is very limited. If someone in your group is very interested in this, you can assign that one person to become what we call an ambassador. And then that person will get cheat sheets that they can use to report back to your groups, like, once a month, not a lot, about what's going on. And if somebody's interested, I would encourage that. And otherwise you can read on the screen. But basically I would say minimally, if this is interesting to you as a group, think about having one person who says, yeah, I'll go to the webinars and I'll report back. And if you're interested as an individual, I would say sign up for the email and then see what next steps make sense for you. And if we don't have our next speaker, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Sakina, are you on the call? I see somebody just entered. Samsung guest. Any quick questions for Jody, folks?
I have a question. I'm one of those large number of individuals who has signed up already for Truth Brigade, but I haven't been actually doing anything for about a year because I found it kind of confusing. Trying to follow other people's comments, it was just overwhelming, and I just stopped. Have you made some changes in the past year that make it easier? It sounds like you have, like getting a pre-formulated message that I can just send off to Facebook with a little tweak. That sounds like it would be really helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, this is the way we've been doing it all along. So I'm sorry that you found it confusing. I'm not sure. That's actually the first. Well, when people first join, we have found that sometimes they're not quite sure what first action to take. And that's why we have the new member orientations every month.
I went to that.
But yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. but
And I
basically,
always got good feedback on
Mhm.
my Facebook page to any posts I did.
Mhm.
But my time is very limited, like everybody's. And for example, when I would try to copy the sample truth sandwich, I
Mhm.
wanted to put it in Facebook and then tweak. I couldn't do it.
You
So
couldn't do it
I
because
couldn't copy it. I don't know why.
it just wouldn't copy for you.
It wouldn't copy for me. That's what I
Well,
remember.
why don't we, you know, let's find a way that I can help you with that.
Okay. Can I put my email in the chat? maybe?
Yeah,
And then
but
we
it
can
also
connect?
sounds like, we're not having another new member orientation
Right, but I'm
until,
not a new member. I mean, I should be.
oh,
able
you don't have
do
to,
this.
everybody comes to that. Anybody who has any questions comes to that. But yeah, I'll put my email in the chat and you can email me and
Okay.
maybe we can figure out, we can problem solve.
Maybe I should try it for a few weeks and see if things
Well,
will get better.
I think, usually the, for me, the best way I learn is from doing something with someone who's already doing it. It's the I do, we do, you do method. And it's hard to just learn it on your own. So I would say if we can figure it out together, that probably would make sense. You can
I appreciate
give it
that.
a try, but it sounds like there's some software, something going on there, or
Yeah, because I really love
yeah.
the idea and I want to do it.
Yeah, it should be, it's designed so that if you only have 15 minutes,
Exactly.
and you're done. So there's something going wrong there. So, maybe you've identified something that other people are experiencing and we just don't know about. So I appreciate your asking, by the way, and hanging in there.
Yeah, I want to, I want to do it actively and regularly, but I haven't.
Yay, that's terrific.
Maybe this is something we could focus on after Virginia and when people have a little time to breathe,
Yeah.
and like go see if we can share some information or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even if the posting
Yeah.
ends up not working, maybe you could be the reporter, that might be helpful. I mean, you'll have to talk about that with your group, but that might be
Okay.
another role
I
that
think
is
we've
just as important.
Okay, real quick, Judy,
Yeah,
because we have to see if Sakina's, I can't tell if Sakina's on the call yet or not. I'm trying to text to Samsung here.
But
Go ahead, Judy, quick.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I love the whole idea of it. I haven't tried it. I think, we could get a few people to try it and see how it goes. I think it's based on really great principles of communication and, so I'm very excited
Psychology.
and I really appreciate the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, Jody, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very
This-
welcome. I
Yeah.
love the opportunity to talk about this, as you can
Nina?
tell.
I just wanted to say that I think in your agenda, Sakina was on at 11:45 and it's only 11:22. So she's got a lot of time,
Oh,
I think, before she shows up.
really? Okay, I had her from 11:15 to maybe
I may have copied it wrong.
okay. All right. All right. Well, Jody, thank you so
Oh, yeah,
much.
you're right. You're right. You're right.
That's
11:15.
It's okay. It's okay. Jody, really can't thank you enough for coming and taking time because
As I say,
this was
you could tell I love
hugely
talking
important.
about it. Great. So
Yeah.
we'll all keep in touch and we'll see if we
We
can figure
will.
out what's happening with Nina. And good luck in the election, everybody. And again, much appreciation.
We absolutely do want to come back and talk to you. So take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jody.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks. All right. So I'll just give a call. That was great. So I'll just give a call out. Sakina, are you there? I see a Samsung. But I don't see any response. So let me check my email real quick. Well, that was great, wasn't it, folks?
Yes.
Very, very interesting possibility for us to check out. Just give another minute to see.
Yeah, I think especially because it gives some tools for individuals to use to deal with some of the things I think that are most oppressive right now. You know, you are seeing all this stuff on TV, you're getting it in your email, you're reading it in the paper, and it has this overall effect of just, you know, beating you down. And so I think it's a very, you know, it's really important to have something that you can feel, you know, is a pushback on all of that. And so anyway, I just appreciated this presentation.
Me too. All right. Well, I'm not quite sure. I don't want to. What I had planned to talk about at the very end of the meeting was just sort of talk about some items that the steering committee had identified as next actions for Indivisible once we got through for 2024. But I'm also hesitant to start launching off into something if Sakina is going to jump in. But we'll nevertheless, I'll just mention a few things very quickly. One is that, as it turns out, we are going to have one of the most competitive congressional races right here in our backyard, thanks to David Trone. So that's going to be our congressional race for District 6, which contains Western Maryland. I was just reading the other morning that, of course, we're not going to know anything until after May with the primary, but there's a massive number of Democratic candidates who are going, and also Neil Parrott is going to run again, evidently, for that seat. So I guess the good news is that Larry Hogan has said he is not going to run for the Senate seat. So, you know, I don't know. But then I also wanted to point out, if you didn't catch it, just this week, John Sarbanes just announced that he is not going to run. And that is the Maryland District 3, right? Which covers part of Montgomery County. So I don't know anything really about how competitive. Hopefully that's a pretty blue district. Maybe others know, and we won't have to worry about that, but that's going to be open now too.
Right.
So any thoughts on that, guys, from anybody who wants to weigh in?
I don't think the 3rd district is particularly competitive.
Right.
Whatever I read, it's always the only competitive district is 6. Everything,
Okay.
I mean, District 1 is red and everything else but 6 is blue, and we're the purple
Yeah.
district.
Okay. And right, John Delaney's wife has just declared for the District 6. Yeah, that I saw that as well. The Lori Ann Sales is also declared for District 6. And Leslie Lopez have declared, but so I don't know I don't know if there's anything
as well.
Yeah. And so I don't know if there's
Or
anything we would
Vogel.
have to do until after May, but you know, maybe not. Yeah, clapping hands.
I think we want to get into the primary.
No, not unless there was some very special reason to get into the primary. The other things that the steering committee has identified are obviously the 18, well, the Indivisible has identified 18 House members, and I don't know if there's any Senate members on there, that we need to fight against in 2024. These are Republicans who won in Biden districts. So like Jen Keggins in Virginia would be one of them. Whoever she is running against, we would want to go and see if we could support. And the other district closest to us, I think I don't know if there's anybody in Pennsylvania. So these are just some things that the steering committee has been discussing. Would anybody else on the steering committee like to speak up? I know we have a number of us here who.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, let me say a couple of things first. I think the election in what was Trone's House district will be very competitive and tight. And that's something that, looking
Yes.
ahead, I think we should really focus on. Because
Absolutely.
it includes so much of Western Maryland, which is very red. Also, don't forget
Absolutely.
that Cardin's seat is open, and there's going to be a Senate election. And the Democratic candidate, it looks like, will be either Trone or Angela Also Brooks from PG County. I don't know what the prognosticators are saying about how competitive that Senate race will be. I don't know who the Republican candidate will be, but that's something for us to keep an eye on. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I know we've all been reading about how horrible this new Speaker of the House is, and he is amazingly horrible.
Horrible.
I mean,
Horrible.
he's not just bad. He's not just MAGA. He's like if you took the worst of every Republican and combined them into one person, but gave him a sort of pleasant demeanor. That's what and he's also smart. So he is very dangerous, really frighteningly dangerous. And the race is on right now to characterize him. The writer Brian Beutler, who's great, who you should follow if you don't already, has been advocating strongly that Dems and all Democratic supporters do everything they can to get the word out about how terrible this guy is. And I think, going sort of to what Jody was talking about, it's important for us to have conversations with our friends and family and network, and not, aggressively push this at them, but, in the course of conversation, make sure people know how bad this guy is, and that he is now second in line after the president to the presidency.
Right.
And he is now the face, and not just the face, he will control what gets on the floor of the House. He's awful. I mean, he's a creationist. He doesn't believe in evolution. He thinks the world was formed a few thousand years ago. I mean, you go right down the line of issues. This guy is scary. And we need to make sure everybody understands how bad he is. I'll stop now.
Yeah, don't bring us down any further, Steve.
Well, no, it's not bringing us down. It's actually, to me,
it's the truth.
A positive message that we can have an impact. And the way we can have an impact is talking to people we know.
We can. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one of the scariest things about him is he's so smooth.
Yeah, he's slick. He's very slick. But I'm hoping that, as Steve mentioned, the race is out now to characterize him. I'm hoping that the GOP will go back to their old habits of destroying each other. And maybe that will shine a light for everybody again on their general dysfunction, incompetence, just, MAGA insanity. But yeah, I'm scared. Of course, he's, and for when, he's an absolute 100% force birther. So there's that as well for him, this gentleman. All right. Well, I don't think, Sakina did tell me she had another event she was coming from. I just want to give another call out and make sure she's not on the call. The person who is Samsung SM isn't responding to my texts. So, and I don't see an email from her. Are there any other things we want to discuss? I mean, again, I'll put the call out to please sign up for more phone banks. This is I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about Virginia, but there's, a lot of races out there. There is a lot of uncertainty. We really, really need folks to jump on those phones. And it's really easy calls, guys. I promise.
Would you like me to call Sakina if you share her phone number with me?
I only have her email, so I just popped an email into her from the Indivisible.
Okay.
But let me open the floor to any other members of Indivisible who want to, talk to us and tell us what you're thinking and what you want to sort of get involved with.
Silence from the masses. Come on, guys. Speak up.
Anybody want to talk about hesitancy on phone banking? Is there something in particular that's a problem, or maybe we could discuss barriers to that? Just time, maybe, or unfamiliarity?
One thing I would say about phone banking is if you're not inclined to do it because you think it's not productive because so few people answer the phone, and that I would say is true. It's maybe 10% of the calls you make will be answered, maybe less. But the other side of that coin is that, as Dee and others have said, there are these races in state legislative elections will be decided by a handful of votes. So if you talk to a few people in an hour, you can swing an election. I mean, these are that close. They really are. So even though it might feel like you're not accomplishing a lot, whatever you're doing has an impact, because these races are so small and are impacted by so few votes. So it really is easy. We'll show you how to do it. So just click on the link in the newsletter and sign up.
Right. And even if you want to, if you're, before I did it for the first time with jaywalkers, like I said, I hadn't done it in many moons, and I was hesitant, and I found it just came back like falling off riding a bicycle again. But if you would like to just chat with any of us first and ask us what it's about, what it's like, I'd be more than happy just to jump on a call. And I'm sure the same with Susan and Steve. We would be happy just to spend a quick time, telling you kind of like what it's like, because sometimes people don't want to sign up for things if they're not sure what they're stepping into. All right, folks. Well, I didn't really have anything else on the agenda because I was my bad. I was kind of expecting, I guess, Sakina to come in, but she did tell me she had another event. And of course, you can imagine how busy everybody is down in Virginia right now. So I guess I could give you back part of your morning. Yes, Mike, go ahead.
Wait, I gotta unmute. Dude.
You're not muted.
Oh, okay. Just to let everyone know, next Saturday, November 4th at 2 p.m., there's a rally for peace in Gaza at Freedom Plaza. So I'm getting several emails from different groups about that. So I will plan on going down there to that and lending my voice to those efforts.
Thanks, Mike. That's good. We'll put out another newsletter early next week with all the list again of all the opportunities, including I'll put in information from Jody about the Truth Brigade as well. I guess we could wrap up the meeting Nina.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind any residents of Rockville and Gaithersburg to vote. I have voted. I'm sure I don't have to remind people in this crowd, but just in case.
Good point. Thanks for bringing that up. We've got to definitely take care of our own backyard, and most especially next year for sure. And also, we want to remember to keep in mind our Board of Education races next year, since now we know the Moms for Liberty are active in Montgomery County. So we'll be needing to keep an eye out on that as well. So
those nonpartisan races are the trickiest. to
Yeah,
vote
they
in,
are tricky.
because if you don't, I mean, everybody's blurb sounds good. So you need somebody to let you know about the background of some of these people.
Well, we will be watching out for the League of Women Voters because they'll be putting in questions this year about opting your children out of curriculum. So hopefully that would suss out some of these folks and make them more visible in just this generic kind of fluffy, descriptions.
Didn't we have some of our members say they were parents at Einstein for one, and maybe some other schools that would be aware of Moms for Liberty actions in those particular schools and would keep us in the loop on that kind of stuff?
Well, I had reached out to the PTA at Einstein, but they kind of gave me just sort of a generic response. But I don't know if you're thinking of somebody else.
No, I heard Einstein in passing. Maybe that's what I heard from you about reaching
Yeah.
out to them. So anyway, let's
All right.
let's keep an eye on that stuff.
Yes, you are so right. And everybody, thanks to Mike, Mike actually held his nose and attended a Moms for Liberty meeting for us. So kudos to Mike for giving us the inside scoop on this lovely meeting they held that was
Did
open
they
to the public.
convince you, Mike?
Right? Probably not.
Probably not.
Too bad I didn't have the info from the Truth Brigade that night, but I did what I could. So I'm glad it's done.
Yeah, I think that was probably just a sit in the audience one and absorb,
Yep.
take notes. So, which is
Nina-
what you did.
Nina Silverberg, I guess that is asking about book banning.
Yes, Montgomery County has banned. Nina, is that you? Silverberg, is that you? I just see
Yes.
Nina. Yeah. Hey, they have banned a book. I was kind of shocked, and I can't figure out. I'm kind of interested in what's her name? She was a former Board of Education member, wondering if she'd come and speak to us. They did ban a book. Oh gosh.
I
share-
was just wondering if Indivisible was doing anything on the topic in general.
On book banning. No,
So
not
many
not that
issues.
I'm aware of. But Montgomery County has recently banned a book in for schools, libraries, an LGBT
Oh boy.
Q book. Yep. I'll find the info and share it with you.
Okay.
Yeah. I couldn't figure out how it was hard to understand how the banning was initiated, because but I think if there should be public meetings that folks could go and express their opinions. So something to watch as well. All right, team. Well, go ahead.
My topic is
Nina.
environment. And I'll raise something. You can tell me if it's off track. But I just learned about this program in DC that has kids doing kids in school doing gardening, and they get really excited about actually gardening and then about eating vegetables. And so it sounds really exciting. And I was wondering if there might be any interest in spreading something like that to Montgomery County.
Judy, mute yourself. Unmute. Sorry.
Okay, actually, Montgomery County used to have a program like that, and I don't know if they currently do, but I know when I was working, there were a number of schools that had gardens. So we can look into it.
Yeah. Hey, Nina,
That'd be great.
Send me the info, Nina, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. All right, gang. Well, I'll give you back about 15 minutes of your morning. And does that sound good? I will,
Yep.
Anybody else? No last hands raised, I see. Want to thank you so much for coming, and watch for the next newsletter.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dee.